VtHMI offers two different ways to communicate to the PLC. These are accessible under Tools, Variables Setup. The default communications is through a built-in driver for Logix PLC, so that would be either a Control-Logix or a Compact-Logix Allen Bradley processor. So that's Logix Direct. All we would need is the IP address of either the processor itself or the communications card in the chassis that is in the same chassis as the PLC. So this assumes the PLC address is at, the PLC itself is at slot 0 in the rack, and this could be the IP address of an EN2T or some type of a communications card. So now that I've set the IP address, I can browse items. We can also change the IP address here. So I press the browse button, and it looks out at the IP address and tries to read the data structure in the PLC. So I found a whole bunch of variables, and I could use this browser to add variables to my variable setup. So I'll double click and it added that first entry. That's not the best way to add variables because the browser doesn't have any information about labels and descriptions, and you'd have to enter all that manually. So there's other ways to add variables through importing files, and we'll talk about that later. So that's direct communications with a built-in Logix driver, which is really nice because it's no extra cost. If you don't have a Logix processor or need to communicate by some other means than Ethernet, like USB or data highway even, then you would need to purchase an OPC server. So you'd press this button to load the OPC servers into this pull down that are installed on your computer. So I'll select this Factory Talk Gateway, and I can browse through that OPC server, and there have been two topics set up. So I'll click this first entry, and now I'm browsing the same data structure as I did with the Logix Direct. So same idea, you could add variables this way, but not the best way. So you do need to manually set the topic corresponding to those to that connection. So we would change the topic here, and now we're ready to communicate. So it's quite easy to switch between OPC and Logix Direct. Just make the selection and then type the IP address or the topic depending on which communications route you're using.